Hi everyone, my name is Habi Abiola. On today's presentation, I'll be talking about the application of security principle, which is going to be based on working remotely from home and how we can protect ourselves at all times. And I will be talking about the eight security failure that can affect, working remotely. And first of all, I'll talk about using the same password for multiple accounts. Working from home, we have to make sure that we secure um, our account at all time. And then using the same account for using the same password for multiple account is like putting us at risk uh, in getting cyber criminals to get access to our account because once they get into one of our accounts, there's probability that they can break into other accounts. So it is important to create a strong password and then change them frequently. Also, not encrypting our files can cause um, cyber criminal to have access to to our data. So one way to protect our file from unauthorized access is to encrypt them. You know, you can use encryption tools like Ascrypt to protect your local files. And in addition, you can also protect your web traffic by using a virtual private network, which is VPN. So these tools encrypt your web traffic and route it through secure servers. So making it difficult for anyone to intercept and steal your data. Also, security failure can occur, when we fail to update, our software. And software updates are very important for keeping our computer safe from security threats. Cyber criminals are always looking for ways to exploit software vulnerability. So it is important to install updates as soon as they are available. And in case we forget, we can set a reminder to install them later. Also, the security failure can occur when we do not back up our data. As a remote worker, backing up our data in case anything goes wrong is very, very important. There are two main ways to do this. Using external hard drive is one way, and then also backing up with our data to the cloud is another way. However, backing up your data to the cloud is likely the more convenient option since you can access your data anywhere in the world. I will also talk about clicking on links from unknown source. When you work at the comfort of your home, so many pop-up comes up, and we have to be cautious on what we click on. There are so many risks that the email you're looking at may not be what it seems. So cyber criminals are getting better at creating fake emails and links that look genuine. So we need to be careful not to click on anything you don't know or trust. So if you're not sure about the source of an email or link, you can contact the company to confirm if the email or the link is genuine. Also, the security failure also comes up when we use public Wi-Fi. When we use public Wi-Fi, we are actually open ourselves, our data to everyone to see. Um, Remote sometimes worker can quickly go out to have coffee and then use the public Wi-Fi hotspot. Using all these hotspot can be very risky because they are not secure. To protect data, worker can use VPN or use a phone hotspot feature to create a more secure Wi-Fi network. Also, not using two factor authentication can cause security failure um, as a remote worker. Security your account using strong password is a good practice, but you can take it a step further by using a two-factor authentication. Adding a layer of security to your um, system is another way to protect yourself from cyber criminals. because this makes it much harder for cyber criminals to gain access to your account. Even they somehow manage to steal your password, but you still have the two-way verification to protect yourself from being hacked. Not reading apps, permission list. As a remote worker, sometimes we download so many things, on our phone, on our system, and sometimes, we don't even read the permission. We just allow. So when you install an application on your device, it will usually ask for specific permission, such as access to your camera, microphone, or location. It is important to take a moment to read this list to understand what an app will be able to do with those permissions. So if you don't read the permission list, you could be granted an app access to sensitive information on your device. So my next is going to be how um the security failure to the principle of cybersecurity. How can you relate to that in terms of the CI tried, the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability. So, and the common failure in terms of confidentiality, the common failure to cybersecurity, especially when you're working from home, we have the airdropping attack, we have the encryption cracking, we have the malicious insiders, and we have the man in the middle attack. And the purpose of confidentiality is to protect the data of a company or individual by preventing unauthorized disclosure. So only those with the proper authorization should be allowed access to the information. And then this should be done on a need to know basis. So various measures can be taken to help protect confidentiality, such as multi-factor authentication, strong password, encryption, and segregation of data. However, before implementing any of these measures, it is important to group the company or individual data into different classes depending on the level of the damage that could be done, if it were to fall into the wrong end. And also the integrity, how to relate the security failure to the principle of cybersecurity in terms of integrity. The challenges that could affect the integrity of the information, and especially for the people that works remotely. We can have the human error, the security failure that comes in terms of physical compromise to the device, compromising a server where end-to-end encryption is not present. So these principles seek to ensure that information is accurate and trustworthy throughout its life cycle. So to do this, effective measure needs to be taken to prevent unauthorized individual from altering data, whether it is at rest or in transit. So additionally, regular backups are necessary to restore data if it is altered. And also, I'm going to be talking about the availability in terms of how you can relate the security failure to the principle of cybersecurity. Information on availability can often occur due to uh, the distributed denial of service attack, which is DDoS, loss of processing ability due to natural disaster and fires can also occur, and then makes the information unavailability. We also have the malicious code, insufficient bandwidth. So availability refers to the ability of information to be accessed by unauthorized personnel when needed. So to protect business continuity, organization can use a variety of methods to maintain the performance of hardware, software, equipment, and communication channels. So this method can include keeping all critical systems up to date, using the DDoS protection, implementing redundancy, using firewalls and proxies, and ensuring adequate bandwidth. So if a security breach or attack occurs, it is important to have an incident response in place to limit the loss of the availability. Also, I'm going to explain the specific design principle that have been violated. And in terms of violation of secure design principle, the violation of um, execution with unnecessary privilege. So this is execution happens and under the description that the product perform an operation at a higher privilege level that is required, which increases the chances of encountering vulnerability of or increases the severity of the consequences of existing vulnerability. So running with elevated privileges can expose new vulnerability as well as weakness that may have existed before but were not discovered because the user wasn't running with elevated privileges. So this vulnerability can be especially dangerous if the user is transitioned from one non-root user to another. And then we also have not using complete mediation. So for this description, the product does not perform access check on a resource every time the resource is accessed by an entity, which can create result weakness and either entity rights or privilege change over time. And for this principle, it actually restrict the catching of information, which can lead to simpler system. And whenever someone tries to access an object, the system should authenticate the privilege associated with the subject. And also, another principle that have been violated is the unnecessary complexity in protection mechanism. That is not using the economy of mechanism. So on this description, the product uses a more complex mechanism than necessary, which could lead to resultant weakness when the mechanism is not correctly understood. It can be modeled, it can be configured, implemented, or used. And then this principle says that using economic of mechanism recognize that people are the key to computer security. And if security related software or system are too complicated to use, configured, or understood, people will not take the necessary precaution. So the extended description says security mechanism should be simple. It should be as simple as possible. And then we also have not failing securely. That's failing open. So the description says that when the product encountered an error, conditions, or failure, a design require it to fall back to a state what is less secure than other options that are available, such as selecting the weakest encryption or using the most permissive access control restriction restrictions. And this principle says that unless a subject is given explicit access to an object, it should be denied access to that object. So I'm going to recommend the design principle needed for remote worker. And I mean, most people are working remotely these days, and the trend is growing since the pandemic. And to make a successful remote working transition, the company must um, abide by some of these principles. The first one is the principle of economics of mechanism. So the principle of simplicity design and advises that designer to keep security mechanism as simple as possible, which reduces the likelihood of error and make the testing process um, way more simpler, especially for the work when you're working remotely. And also, I also recommend that the principle of separation of privilege. It's the system should not grant permission based on a single condition. So this principle is restrictive because it limits the number of people who can access system entities. The principle is similar to separation of duty principle that I talk about in the integrity security policy. Um, Before privilege is granted, two or more checks should be performed to ensure that only authorized individuals have access. Also, I will recommend principle of open design. So this security of mechanism depends on the secrecy of its implementation. The principle suggests that adding complexity to a system does not make it more secure. So this concept captures the terms security, thorough, obscurity. This principle not only applies to cryptographic systems but also to other computer security related systems. And the last one that I will recommend is the principle of least common mechanism. So the mechanism used to access resources should not be shared. So the principle of the least privilege applies to the way resources are shared with the computer system. This principle limits the amount of access individuals have to these resources. So in order to protect the integrity of the system as a whole, there have to be the system should not be shared at any level. And thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you find it helpful and have a good one.